says Mustafa.
This is incredibly important for Syria. It is a country that has been through some of the worst crimes of the 21st century over the last 14 years of war.
Important for the victims, too, says Dan McLaughlin, legal director for the Center of Accountability and Justice that represented the witnesses, and adds it's also important for the U.S.
At a time when the rule of law is being undermined in many respects, this trial is an example that our U.S. legal system can be used to prosecute those who commit atrocity crimes.
It was a long road to accountability for atrocity crimes committed in Syria decades ago. For NPR News, this is Deborah Amos.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. A group of experts plans to meet tomorrow to challenge the Trump administration's agenda on autism spectrum disorder. The independent group is billing itself as a science-based alternative to an existing federal advisory committee. NPR's John Hamilton has more.
In late January, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. replaced every member of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee. Many of the 21 new members share his debunked belief that autism can be caused by vaccines. Nelson Singer, president of the Autism Science Foundation, says that's a problem.
The current committee has been hijacked by a narrow ideological agenda that does
says the new group decided to meet anyway. She plans to speak about the need for more research on profound autism, which includes people who are nonverbal and require high levels of support.
We have to go back and determine whether the existing interventions are even appropriate for people with profound autism because they were never tested on people with profound autism.
Another scheduled speaker is Helen Tager-Flusberg, professor emerita at Boston University and a member of the Independent Committee.
I intend to talk about the future of research on language and communication in autism and how might we harness technology.
Specifically, technology that could make it easier for some autistic people to communicate without speaking. Tager-Flusberg says in many ways the Independent Committee plans to mimic its federal counterpart.
We do plan to prepare reports that we will send to Congress. I very much hope we will be able to speak to the NIH.
The new group also hopes to coordinate research funded by foundations and other private entities. Tager-Flusberg says the Independent Committee came together quickly and is still evolving. That's welcome news to Eric Garcia, the author of We're Not Broken, Changing the Autism Conversation.
I wish that there was more representation of autistic people on this independent board because I feel like they're being once again shoved to the side when autistic people should have a say.
The current roster includes one autistic member. Garcia says he supports the group's efforts to counter false information about autism and to back a research agenda that's firmly grounded in science. But he says an independent advisory committee can only do so much.
Nothing replaces the official imprimatur of the U.S. federal government, and nobody can spend as much money as the U.S. federal government.
Private research funding for autism is on the rise, though, and the Independent Committee wants to make sure that money is spent wisely. John Hamilton, NPR News.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
It's 4:48. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Russ McNamara. Monday, March 13th was the last day WNBA owners and players to come to an agreement for a new collective bargaining agreement without delaying this upcoming season. A verbal agreement was made this morning. We'll get an update on the impending WNBA season.
The Belle Isle Casino is open, but don't expect to see any slot machines. And it's Severe Weather Awareness Week. I'm Pat Batchelor. Join me for Morning Edition Detroit tomorrow at 5 on 1019 WDET.
WDET is a proud media partner of the Concert of Colors, now bringing its programming to Detroit's neighborhoods year-round. This month, the Concert of Colors neighborhood program proudly presents the Freedom and Healing Music Festival with three-time Grammy-nominated and Kresge Fellow Deshaun Jones and the Urban Art Orchestra, and Kresge Fellow Kenny Green and the Cosmic Music Therapy. Concert happens Saturday, March 28th at 2 p.m. at the Solanas Casey Center, 1780 Mount Elliott in Detroit. Free and open to the public. More at concertofcolors.com.
WDET is supported by AEG Presents Brandi Carlile with special guest I'm With Her at Meadowbrook Amphitheater on Friday, August 21st. Tickets for Brandi Carlile will be available on Friday, March 20th, starting at 10 a.m. at brandicarlile.com.
Out there on the roads right now, we are looking at a closure of Ford Road there between Haggerty and I-275. It's because of an earlier crash between a car and a semi. The 275 north and southbound ramps to Ford Road are currently closed because of that crash as well. Cloudy skies tonight, temps in the 30s, partly sunny tomorrow with highs near 50. Rain on Friday, highs in the upper 50s.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Elsa Chang. Pay us what you owe us. That is what women's basketball players demanded on their t-shirts last season. And now, after days of marathon negotiations, a verbal agreement to keep the WNBA season on schedule has been reached. The agreement, announced this morning, is said to raise the average player pay to more than $500,000, according to the Players Union. Representatives for the players and for the league are calling this transformative. Megan Hall is a reporter for USA Today. She's been covering this whole collective bargaining agreement saga step by step and joins us now. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, great to have you. Okay, can we start with revenue sharing? Can you just break down what was the share previously and what did the players want?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So previously it was about 9%, and that's what players were getting in the old CBA.
Collective bargaining agreement, CBA.
Yes, so in these new negotiations, the league said, hey, we will give you 70% of net revenue, right? But the players are like, that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for gross revenue. And they initially started around 40% in the early parts of the negotiations and got down to about 25% in the first year of the deal. This morning there was the ESPN report that the average revenue share is about 20% across the life of the deal. So if you're thinking about that, that's not that far off from what the players were asking for.
Interesting. Well, can we also talk about housing affordability? I mean, that's a concern that a lot of Americans can relate to these days. How did housing affordability make it into the bucket of agreements here?
In the grand scheme of things, housing became an issue because of the current player salaries, correct? So I'll give you, for example, a rookie salary is about $76,000. So the WNBA has provided housing since the first CBA in 1999. And so, of course, in these negotiations, it came up. But how it came up and how it was discussed was a little bit different for both sides. Ultimately, in the early parts of the negotiations, the league was like, well, hey, if you're going to be making more money, we don't really need housing. And the players said, well, we want housing to be provided because we're also concerned about the people that are in the middle part of this negotiation, the middle part that are going to be affected. And I think that's really where it became the crux of, okay, what can we provide? How can we help support them in a way that still helps them as they transition into these new salaries?
Let me ask you about long term going forward. We've seen this huge increase in WNBA viewership coming off of the heels of the Caitlin Clark effect and now a league expansion. Do you think we're going to see continued growth in popularity and viewership over the next 5 to 10 years? Or do you think this enthusiasm for the WNBA is going to taper at some point, and therefore the leverage that these players might have in some future negotiation, could that end up being used?
I actually think that when the players said, pay us what you owe us, it wasn't just for them. It was for the future generations. And I think that's what's getting lost in the conversation to that point, is that this is for momentum building. This is for securing the future. This is for paving the path for every player that would come after them. And so I think we often hear this phrase that women's sports is not a moment, it's a movement. And this movement has been growing and growing, if you will, as well. I think the WNBA realizes what they have in these players and the value that they bring. At the end of the day, ultimately, the players know and the league knows that the league actually does not move without its players.
Megan Hall from USA Today, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Shacking up with someone and raising and protecting a family together, that is the domain of people and birds and apparently a certain kind of cockroach. Here's science reporter Owen David.
Let's talk pair bonding. Nate Lowe is an evolutionary biologist at the University of Sydney.
When you have a pair bond, two individual organisms will spend an extended period of time with each other and will exclude other individuals from the bond.
It's an arrangement with numerous benefits: grooming, nest defense, and sharing food. It requires enough brain power to learn to recognize your partner. Pair bonding shows up frequently in birds and mammals, even fish.
But we very rarely see it in animals. So things like insects or crustaceans or other corals.
Lowe was curious, though, about a kind of wood-feeding cockroach that lives, among other places, in the forests of Okinawa.
The male and the female will burrow into the rotting wood and form a gallery.
And then they do something unique, says Haruka Osaki, a behavioral ecologist at the Museum of Nature and Human Activities in Hyogo, Japan. The two roaches chew off each other's wings and eat them.
Female eats the male's wings and the male eats female's wings. And when it's finished, it means they formed a pair.
That's when the new couple makes a nest out of their little patch of rotting paradise where they mate care for their young. But pairing doesn't necessarily mean a pair bond, and the researchers wanted to know just how exclusive these insects are, how strong their bond actually is. So Osaki collected a bunch of roaches from Okinawa.
Just go to the forest and find the log on the ground and chop it with my hatchet. So I just draw their house.
The experiment was simple. They put pairs of roaches in artificial nest boxes in the lab. Some of those pairs had eaten each other's wings, some hadn't. The researchers then introduced an intruder to the pairs.
Okay, here it comes.
Nate Lowe calls up a video of a roach pair that had not feasted on each other's wings.
You see, they're just very relaxed about it.
No aggression, no fuss. The interlopers allowed to stay in the nest. But when Lowe shows me a roach pair that had eaten one another's wings,
Both the male and the female attack.
by ramming the intruder,
You can see the intruder's very worried it's trying to escape because it knows that it's in trouble. So it's like they've got this pact.
one that looks a lot like a pair bond, in which the two roaches become highly aggressive towards outsiders and only tolerant of their partner. And this ability to distinguish between individuals can provide both survival and reproductive benefits. And there's another takeaway.
Invertebrates probably are more complex and actually have some form of cognition more than we might expect. Even though they've got tiny brains, they can develop quite human-like characteristics.
The research appears in the journal Royal Society Open Science. Jessica Ware agrees the study offers strong evidence for pair bonding in this type of cockroach. She's the curator of invertebrate zoology at the American Museum of Natural History. Ware says the findings also open up lots more questions, like how exactly do these roaches recognize one another?
Maybe that's part of why they might consume the wings, to get some kind of information about the mate.
Information they use to remember their partner over time. It's pretty remarkable, Ware says.
We often tend to think of things that we don't like cockroaches, as being less interesting, or that they don't have beautiful, interesting stories. And they do.
Stories of roach romance, which sometimes can be love at first bite. For NPR News, I'm Ari Daniel.
Hubba hubba. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. Support for NPR comes from this station and from Cunard. Guests can sail a 7-night transatlantic crossing between New York and England or travel around the world in 2027 for over 100 nights with fine dining and entertainment. Cunard.com. From Imaginable Futures, funding programs in the U.S. with the goal of ensuring young children and their parents get the education they need to thrive. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. From Fisher Investments, Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
WDET is supported by attorney Gary August at August Law, helping clients to litigate complex business disputes on a contingency basis for over 30 years. Online at august-law.com.
This is 1019 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio. Your connection to news, music, and conversation. I'm Ross McNamara. Hope you're having a nice Wednesday afternoon. Where All Things Considered Detroit is next. In 1 hour, it is Marketplace. 7, it's on point. At 8 p.m., the Boulevard, Raji. Out there in Canton, Ford Road is closed between Haggerty and I-275. The I-275 north and southbound ramps to Ford Road are also closed because of that crash. Cloudy skies tonight, temps in the 30s. Partly sunny tomorrow with highs near 50.
I was responding immediately without the facts. That's my fault. That won't happen, Secretary.
Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma testifies at his confirmation hearing to become the next Homeland Security Secretary.
It's Wednesday, March 18th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News.
I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Aid shipments are now stranded near the Strait of Hormuz as the war in Iran grinds on.
The disruptions that are happening with the shipping lines are real, but there are alternatives.
Also, this war is showing how drone technology is changing warfare.
And a graffiti artist turned floral designer who's beautifying New York City.
He goes by Mr. Flower Fantastic and is keeping his real name a secret.
I've been coming to this place since I was a kid, and in my wildest dreams, that one day I'd have the opportunity to do something here.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. The nation's top intelligence official, Tulsi Gabbard, told Congress today that although weakened, Iran's government still appears to be functioning. NPR's Greg Myrie has details.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard described Iran's government this way after nearly 3 weeks of airstrikes.
The regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities.
The testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee came a day after the head of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned to protest the Iran war. Joe Kent said he quit because Iran didn't pose an imminent threat to the U.S. At the Senate hearing, CIA Director John Ratcliffe said he disagreed. He said, quote, "I think Iran has been a constant threat to the United States for an extended period of time." Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
Israel's military says it is starting a broad operation targeting crossings in southern Lebanon. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalshi reports from Beirut the announcement came with new evacuation orders for people still in South Lebanon.
While this isn't the first time the Israeli military targets bridges in South Lebanon, it now says it will widen attacks and strike many crossings on the Litani River. The Litani River is considered a buffer zone line in the conflict. In a statement posted on social media, the Israeli military said the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah uses the crossings to transfer weapons. The Israeli military began a ground incursion in South Lebanon this week, and troops moved deeper into the country. The Israeli defense minister said those evacuated south of the Litani River will not be allowed to return to their homes until, quote, the safety of northern Israeli residents is guaranteed. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Beirut.
A divided Federal Reserve today voted to keep interest rates steady. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the central bank is trying to keep a lid on both inflation and unemployment.
Fed policymakers voted 11-1 to leave their benchmark interest rate unchanged. On average, members of the Fed's rate-setting committee expect to cut rates just once this year. The labor market has shown signs of weakness in recent months. Employers cut 92,000 jobs in February, and the unemployment rate inched up to 4.4%. At the same time, inflation has remained sticky. The U.S. war with Iran could make that worse, triggering a sharp jump in prices for both gasoline and diesel fuel. A new report from the Labor Department shows even before the war began, wholesale prices were rising at the fastest pace in a year. Fed policymakers are now projecting somewhat higher inflation than they were 3 months ago. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 768 points to close at 46,225. The Nasdaq lost 327. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, funding programs in the U.S. with the goal of ensuring young children and their parents get the education they need to thrive. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Traffic reports made possible by the Mine Safety and Health Administration.
This is news from Detroit Public Radio. I'm Russ McNamara. Good afternoon. Vice President J.D. Vance claimed in a speech today that the Trump administration's immigration policies are keeping the country safe by removing violent offenders. Data from the Department of Homeland Security show that the vast majority of the people being detained and deported do not have criminal records. Critics have said that tactics have been too aggressive in cities like Minneapolis, where federal agents killed 2 American citizens. Vance says how ICE behaves in Michigan depends on local leaders.
So long as we've got the cooperation and so long as we're working as a team, the chaos that you see in Minneapolis, it's not going to happen. It only happens when you've got broken and dysfunctional political leadership that tries to stop us from doing our jobs.
The strong-arm tactics used by ICE led to grassroots protests by area residents and were not organized by local officials. Most of the arrests of protesters were made by local police. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is renting office space in Southfield and planning to turn a warehouse in Romulus into a detention facility. The Michigan Legislature's Firearm Safety Caucus released its list of priorities today. It includes enacting state-level gun dealer licensing, which would include carrying a $1 million liability insurance policy. The group also wants a 3-day delay in gun sales. Democratic Representative Julie Brixey chairs the caucus.
Our package ensures gun sales are done properly and that sellers are held liable if they sell a firearm to someone who is prohibited from owning one. We're placing restrictions on high-capacity magazines, bump stocks that increase the legality of weapons.
The backers say these measures would build on tougher gun laws adopted following mass shootings at Oxford High School and Michigan State University. Cloudy skies tonight, temperatures in the 30s, partly sunny tomorrow with highs near 50, rain on Friday, highs in the upper 50s.
On a Wednesday, it's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly in Washington.
And I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen faced sometimes heated questioning from his colleagues today during his hearing to become the next Secretary of Homeland Security. He got several questions about his temperament and the direction that he wants to take the sprawling agency in. NPR's Jimena Bustillo was in the room and joins us now. Hi, Jimena. Hi. Hi. Okay, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, this hearing comes after President Trump removed Kristi Noem from this position, and this is a job, at least under the Trump administration, that has largely focused on immigration enforcement, right? So what do senators want to know about Mullen as a possible replacement for Noem?
There has been broad concern about a lack of trust in the Department of Homeland Security and a call to tone down enforcement tactics that have resulted in injuries and deaths, including of U.S. citizens. One big focus for lawmakers was Mullen's own temper and whether that makes him the right person to restore trust. This was brought up by Republican Senator Rand Paul.
Explain to the American public why they should trust a man with anger issues to set the proper example for ICE and Border Patrol agents.
Now, those anger issues Paul mentions include an instance where Mullen threatened to fight the president of the Teamsters Union during another hearing.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's pretty intense. How did Mullen respond to that?
So that president, Sean O'Brien, was actually in the audience in support of Mullen today. And here's what Mullen said in response.
Mr. Chairman, you're going to have your opinion. I'm going to have mine. As Secretary of Homeland Security, I'm going to bring peace of mind and security to this country.
He was also asked about his initial response to the deadly shooting of 37-year-old Alex Preddy. He was a U.S. citizen killed by Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis. Mullen at the time called him, quote, deranged.
Those words probably should have been retracted. I shouldn't have said that, and as Secretary I wouldn't. The investigation is ongoing. And like I said, there's sometimes going to make a mistake, and I'll own it.
Noem also faced pushback about how she characterized Preddy, and she was slower to admit mistakes like that. It'll be up to Mullen to prove that he would be able to strike a new tone when leading the agency.
Okay, well, we heard Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, asking Mullen about his conduct. Did Mullen get many other pointed questions from Republicans?
You know, he did a few times, though generally support for Mullen was split down party lines. The most critical Republican was Paul, and he and Democrats also took other issues, including some foreign travel that Mullen had done that was not disclosed in mandatory government reports. Mullen said that he'd be happy to have a separate classified briefing with Paul on it. Of course, you'll remember that by the end of Kristi Noem's term, senators from both parties have had serious concerns and criticisms of her. Now, it's notable to me that this hearing did have a more of a tone and moments to spotlight bipartisanship. Mullen brought in a Democrat from North Carolina, Representative Josh Gottheimer, to support him, even though Gottheimer isn't even on the panel that will be voting on Mullen. And there was also support from Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman, who is among those who is voting on this confirmation.
Okay, well, Mullen would be joining DHS if confirmed. Well, the agency is technically shut down, and I imagine that came up today, yeah?
Yes, it was a big theme, and Republicans used this hearing to platform a discussion about how hundreds of thousands of federal employees are furloughed or working without pay okay. And Democrats argued that parts of DHS, like those that deal with airport security or disaster response, could still be funded even while immigration components are negotiated. Mullen said he hoped the agency was funded by the time he takes the lead, but it still seems like there's a lot of daylight and little progress.
That is NPR's Jimena Bustillo. Thank you, Jimena.
Thank you.
Several hundred oil tankers are stranded near the Strait of Hormuz. That is the narrow waterway that Iran has effectively shut down in response to the U.S.-Israel war. The closure of the strait is also blocking the flow of aid shipments, as NPR's Aya Petrawi reports from Dubai.
Far from the towering skyscrapers of Dubai is a desert industrial site that's also home to the UN Humanitarian Response Depot. That's where UN agencies like the World Food Program, the UN Children's Fund, and the World Health Organization store emergency supplies to send to hotspots around the world.
We've sent shipments to Gaza, Madagascar, West Africa, Chad, Sudan, Yemen.
That's Alex Marianelli, the World Food Program's director in the UAE. I meet him at this UN Global Depot in Dubai, where nutritional food supplements are piling high.
Well, where we're standing in a warehouse right now. So I'm gonna go. It's a humanitarian warehouse.
One more shot. Inside this warehouse are boxes of World Food Program supplements that were meant to sail from Dubai through the Strait of Hormuz. From there, they were supposed to go to Iran and then to Afghanistan. But because of the U.S.-Israeli war, virtually no ships have made it through the narrow waterway, including this UN shipment. Floor to ceiling are just boxes and boxes and boxes of what they call super cereal. This is fortified wheat blend with sugar for malnutrition. And all of this was supposed to be essentially going to Afghanistan, and instead they're just piling up here. Walid Ibrahim, who heads the UN's response here in Dubai, says they're having to reroute this aid.
The disruptions that are happening with the shipping lines are real. But there are alternatives, and we are doing exactly that. We're exploring those alternatives, we're utilizing those alternatives.
That includes flying aid out from Dubai. But Marianelli says the goods in this warehouse are too big to be sent by plane.
So we've brought it in to consolidate the shipment, and we're going to move it to Afghanistan by road up north. That's the current plan.
That's a long way.
It's a long way. It's a long way. It gives us it's about a month longer than it would take by sea, but it's also more cost effective based on the current environment.
And in this current environment, Marianelli says the World Food Program's operating costs around the world have gone up about 20% in just the last 2 weeks because of the ripple effects of the war. Aya Petrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
A fire hydrant, a manhole cover, a dumpster. These are fixtures of the urban streetscape. But one artist, whose medium is flowers, has turned those ordinary objects into artistic installations of extraordinary beauty. NPR's Jennifer Vanasco met with Mr. Flower Fantastic, who gave her a tour of his new show.
Mr. Flower Fantastic has created floral sculptures for some big names.
I've worked with Serena, I've worked with Michael Jordan, Spike Lee.
But his own real name is a secret.
Mr. Flower Fantastic is a bit of a mouthful, so we like to keep it short and simple. So they call me MFF, my friends call me Flower.
He's tall and wearing a hat. His eyes are hidden behind tinted, cool-looking glasses. In public, he usually wears a military-style gas mask. It hides his identity, but also...
I'm allergic to flowers.
Which, of course, is ironic. In photos, the gas mask is intimidating, but in person, Mr. Flower Fantastic is warm and ready to share. He's a lifelong New Yorker, and he says that this show, at the New York Botanical Garden, this has been his dream.
I've been coming to this place since I was a kid, and in my wildest dreams, my wildest dreams, one day I'd have the opportunity to do something here. So I want to say that I approached it. I manifested this.
But technically, Joanna Rourke approached him. She's the vice president of exhibitions and programming at the Garden, and she curated the show.
We're always sort of looking for people who are doing something interesting and new and creative, and reaching out to befriend them and see where we might have an opportunity to work together.
The orchid show is called Mr. Flower Fantastic's Concrete Jungle, and he's using it as a chance to stay anonymous, but to tell a very personal story. His installations are all pulled from living in the city.
We have an incredible soundscape that has a combination of ambient New York
sounds, nature, some popular music. As cars would pass by on the streets. There's children's laughter, birds chirping. It's forever peaceful, forever springtime, forever blooming here.
He's built life-size storefronts filled with exuberant flowers, mainly orchids. Take a look at this typical New York brownstone, painted matte black and sitting in a shimmering pool of black water. It's covered with flowers.
It is exploding with color, exploding with texture.
There are hundreds of orchids, maybe thousands in the show.
I'd love to count for you, but I don't know if you have enough time.
You wind through paths dripping with plants. There's an orchid-covered newsstand, a laundromat with terrariums where the clothes would be, and then there's the car wash. A taxi made of carnations is driving through. He remembers being dazzled by a car wash as a kid.
And you're like sitting in a car.
Sitting in a car with my uncle, in his station wagon, going through a car wash for the first time, absolutely blew my mind. You know, and I think from that moment on, I was hooked.
He says it's the first place where he experienced the power of design to create another world. Mr. Flower Fantastic grew up between Jamaica, Queens and the island of Jamaica. He lived with his mom.
She's the one that shared the gift of gardening with me. We did have a garden in our yard, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was not only was the garden beautiful, but just the time spent together was beautiful and important and nurturing. All of those things that go into creating a garden: time, patience, love, care.
He spent time as a graffiti artist. One of his tags is here, recreated in flowers. His work is all about finding unexpected beauty in the things we see every day, and in the people. Like his mom, the gardener, who started him on this path.
She's here just about every day.
But even though Mr. Flower Fantastic is known around the world for his expertise, she doesn't take gardening tips from him.
Oh, yeah, I give my mom advice back. She's forever giving me advice. No, she's awesome, and yeah, this is just a beautiful experience for us both.
Jennifer Vanasco, NPR News, New York.
It's 5:17. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Russ McNamara. On the way next from All Things Considered. A New York Times investigation has revealed allegations of rape and abuse against labor leader Cesar Chavez. We'll have that story coming up.
Are you dreaming about new adventures? Ready to fill in your travel calendar? In 2027, the WDET travel program offers 4 trips. The destinations are Costa Rica, Paris, a European cities trip featuring Prague, Vienna, and Budapest, and Christmas on the Danube. Adventure awaits. For dates and details, go to wdet.org/events.
Between sticky inflation, a sluggish labor market, and geopolitical tensions, eyes are on the Fed's next interest rate decision and what Chair Jay Powell has to say about it. I'm Amy Scott, dissecting the Fed's press conference, next time on Marketplace.
Marketplace, this evening at 6 on 1019 WDET.
Out there on the roads right now, we're looking at some delays in 94 westbound between 75 and Linwood. The Lodge southbound is slow between Glendale and Webb. US 23 southbound backed up between Geddes Road and Washtenaw Avenue. Just a reminder, the I-275 north and southbound ramps to Ford Road are currently closed because of a crash. Ford Road is closed between Haggerty and I-275. Cloudy skies tonight, temperatures in the 30s, partly sunny tomorrow with highs near 50. Rain on Friday, highs in the upper 50s, partly sunny and 60 on Saturday with more rain for Sunday. Right now it's 30 degrees at 5:20.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. From Amazon Business, offering business buying tools and technology with the goal of simplifying how you stock up to get ahead. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com. And from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Louise Kelly. The legacy of a revered civil rights leader is in question amid allegations that he sexually abused girls and women. Cesar Chavez, the late co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union, was a champion for farm workers and helped overhaul labor laws. But a New York Times investigation out today reveals Chavez's alleged history of sexual assault. For more, we're joined by NPR's Adrian Florido. Hi there, Adrian.
Hi, Meredith.
Hi, tell me more about these accusations against Chavez laid out by the New York Times.
Well, two women who spoke with the Times told the paper that Chavez began sexually abusing them in the 1970s when they were 12 and 13 years old. Deborah Rojas and Ana Maria were both the daughters of organizers within the United Farm Workers, and Chavez was in his 40s and was the union's president. And one of the women, Rojas, said that during the now famous UFW march across California, Chavez raped her in a motel room when she was 14. The paper also reported another shocking allegation from Dolores Huerta, who co-founded the United Farm Workers with Chavez and was his longtime organizing partner and is still an icon in the labor movement. Now, she told the Times that on one occasion Chavez pressured her into having sex with him, and that on another in 1966 he raped her in a car. She got pregnant from both encounters, as she said, and erased her. The children to be raised by other families.
It is important, Adrian, we need to know NPR is not independently investigating these allegations. The Times, when it did, they said they spoke with more than 60 people. They reviewed documents, they reviewed union materials to try to corroborate these allegations. The fallout has been really fast and swift. How are people within it?
Well, the fallout began even before this investigation was published today. Yesterday, the Cesar Chavez Foundation, which promotes his legacy, issued a preemptive statement saying that they became aware of, quote, disturbing allegations and that it was shocked and saddened. The United Farm Workers also issued a statement yesterday acknowledging the allegations. It said it wanted to work to help victims of Chavez's alleged abuse, and it canceled events that were scheduled for Cesar Chavez Day on March 31st. That's a state holiday here in California. Chavez celebrations in other states have also been canceled or renamed.
Dolores Huerta, she's never publicly shared that allegation that Chavez raped her. How does this recast the view of their partnership?
Well, this is ground shifting. Chavez died in 1993, and he's long been a hero of the labor movement and of the Mexican-American community in our days. Huerta has always spoken highly of him, but she issued a statement today saying, quote, I'm nearly 96 years old, and for the last 60 years have kept a secret because I believed in exposing the truth that hurt the farm worker movement and I've spent my entire life fighting for. These revelations are going to uplift not only the view of their partnership, but also Chavez's status as a hero of labor and of Mexican Americans. I'm already seeing online calls for murals of him to be painted over for schools and streets and community centers named after him to be renamed Huerta.
NPR's Adrian Florido, thank you.
Thank you, Meredith.
Cheap drones are reshaping modern warfare. It's a change that's been playing out for several years, but most recently in the skies across the Middle East, as President Trump's war with Iran continues, and it's catching the U.S. off guard, as NPR's Kat Monster reports.
Vladimir Ivanovich Jr. stands in a residential neighborhood in Erbil, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and points out incoming drones high in the sky. In this video from the early days of the war, you can see first one drone, then another, obliterating with a puff of smoke, followed by an explosion.
U.S. interceptor missiles cost millions.
That type of cost exchange favors the Iranians over the long term.
Kelly Grieco is a senior fellow and military analyst at the Stimson Center. She says part of the reason the U.S. is using these uber expensive interceptors is because it's been focusing its military preparation for more high-end ballistic threats.
They're less prepared for intercepting these lower end threats. So it's like a perfect storm, if you will, for the Iranians to be able to exploit those vulnerabilities.
It's also a numbers game. The U.S. may run out of interceptor missiles before Iran runs out of drones. That's something U.S. officials who were not authorized to speak publicly have told NPR they're concerned about as the war drags on. The Pentagon did not respond to a request for comment. Meanwhile, the Iranian drone attacks have been relentless and widespread. In Kuwait, 6 U.S. service members were killed. In the UAE, drones hit multiple petroleum facilities. And in both Saudi Arabia and Iraq, drones have struck U.S. embassies.
This isn't surprising that they would do this. It's surprising that there weren't defense mechanisms in place at the final level on the ground.
Dara Massico is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, specializing in defense. She points out that there has been ample opportunity for the U.S. to study and learn about drone defense systems, particularly Shahed drone defense, as Russia has been using them in Ukraine for years.
Now we're doing it in real time. We're kind of scrambling to get it done when it could have been done before.
Russian forces have launched tens of thousands of Shahed-type drones at Ukraine throughout the 4-year war. In response, the Ukrainians have had to think up low-cost ways to defend themselves, shooting them down with machine guns, jamming them electronically, and even intercepting them with their own inexpensive drones. Those are methods the U.S. could be implementing too. But President Trump has rebuffed offers from Ukraine to assist U.S. forces in countering Shahed drones in the Middle East. Here he is on Fox News just last week.
No, we don't need to help in drone defense. We know more about drones than anybody.
The Pentagon says Iranian one-way drone attacks are down by 95% since the start of the war. But in the region, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. NPR correspondents in the UAE, Iraq, and in Israel have all sheltered from or seen Iranian drones in the skies in recent days. And more broadly, those scenes are increasingly how wars everywhere will be playing out, as Rogers at Cornell says.
These sort of drone systems are going to start defining every single war.
Unmanned air campaigns with real human costs. Kat Lonsworth, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News.
President Trump's choice to lead the Department of Homeland Security would like the agency to get a little less attention.
My goal in 6 months is that we're not in the lead story every single day.
How might Markwayne Mullin lead immigration efforts? Tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News.
Morning Edition with Pat Batchelor starts at 5 a.m. right here on Detroit Public Radio.
This week on Alternate Take, we'll listen to new music from Adult, Shabaka, and Tinariwen. We'll also continue our tribute to women in music. Join me, Liz Warner, for Alternate Take Thursday night, 8 to 10 on WDET.
WDET is a community service of Wayne State University, a premier public research university in the heart of Detroit.
Traffic is sponsored by UMS, presenting Angelique Kidjo, blending West African rhythms with jazz, pop, funk, and more at Hill Auditorium, March 26th. Tickets at ums.org. Out there on the roads, slow traffic 94 westbound between 75 and Linwood, 75 northbound slow between Holbrook and 8th Mile, I-96 westbound at Kent Lake Road. There is a crash. Traffic's backed up a couple miles to around Milford Road. And I-275 northbound southbound ramps to Ford Road are closed because of a crash on Ford Road.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. Israel says another high-ranking Iranian leader has been killed in the latest airstrikes, targeting the country's top officials. This comes as thousands of mourners gathered in Tehran for a mass funeral of the heads of Iran's National Security Council and others. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports.
Defense Minister Israel Katz says Iran's intelligence minister, Esmail Khatib, was responsible for, quote, the regime's apparatus of repression and assassination and instrumental in the deadly crackdown on Iranian demonstrators earlier this year. Katz says the war is in a decisive phase and that, quote, no one in Iran has immunity, everyone is a target. Meanwhile, mourners packed a huge Tehran square for the funerals of two leaders also killed by Israel. Live stream of the massive crowd carrying multiple coffins was broadcast on Iranian TV. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
On Capitol Hill today, President Trump's nominee for Homeland Security Secretary talked about the nation's disaster response. Senator Markwayne Mullin said FEMA needs to move faster to help communities hit by disaster recover. NPR's Michael Copley has more.
Mullin says FEMA wasn't designed to be a first responder after floods, tornadoes, and other disasters. Instead, he says the agency needs to focus on supporting state officials who are on the front lines.
Allowing the state to have their emergency response. FEMA simply helping write checks and assuring that they have the capability and the manpower if need be.
Mullin also said FEMA needs to move faster, reimbursing communities after disasters. He's seeking confirmation at the same time a Presidential Review Council is writing a proposal to overhaul FEMA. Its preliminary recommendations include significant cuts to the agency's workforce, making it harder for states to qualify for federal disaster aid. Michael Copley, NPR News.
Stocks finished lower across the board on Wall Street today. The Dow down 1.5%. This is NPR.
This is news from Detroit Public Radio. I'm Russ McNamara. Good afternoon. Vice President J.D. Vance made a stop at a robotics manufacturing plant in Auburn Hills today. As WDET's Alex McClenna reports, Vance largely focused on pitching Trump's economy ahead of this year's midterm elections.
During his prepared remarks, the vice president spent most of his time touting the administration's economic policies, which Vance said have been good for job growth, but made little reference to the ongoing war in Iran. When asked by reporters about oil prices, Vance acknowledged they are up.
I will say, the president said this, and I certainly agree with it. This is a temporary blip.
Vance promised the crowd gasoline costs would come back down once the U.S., quote, finishes taking care of business in the Middle East. He did not say when that would be. I'm Alex McLennan, WDET News.
Google is planning to build a large data center in Van Buren Township. As Sarah Swick reports, developers are calling it Project Cannoli.
Some details about the proposal have been floating around for weeks, but the company pushing for it remained a mystery until Google put all speculation to rest this week. The tech giant simultaneously filed initial regulatory paperwork with DTE Energy. The data center would require an almost unimaginably massive amount of energy, roughly equivalent to the entire output of DTE's Fermi nuclear power plant. But Google says it will add more than double that amount to the overall grid, much of it from renewable sources. I'm Sarah Swick.
It's Brain Awareness Week, a global initiative to raise awareness about brain research. Michigan resident Richard Bradshaw was diagnosed